Welcome to Wii U Quick Reviews, the show where I review any Wii U game as quickly as possible. Today's game is Transformers Prime, but this has left me in sort of an odd situation. You see, in the past when I've reviewed games that relied on their connections to other types of media, I was either a part of the fanbase, the case with the Phineas and Ferb game, or there really was no fanbase to speak of. The Croods. So I figured I might need a little help covering Transformers Prime given the surprisingly active community surrounding the property.
Hey, what's up? I'm Meg. I've been Ian's friend for about 4 years now. I've been into Transformers for about 3 or so years, and boy oh boy do I love these guys, oh man. I volunteered to help with this episode to maybe give a more in-depth insight into the game coming from as a fan of the show, and also just as an excuse to sort of gush about these robots for a bit. But yeah, great to be here, my dude.
Let's get started.
The story is simple, it gets the job done well enough. The Decepticons want to awaken a big bad dude. The Autobots don't want that. It's fine enough to get the plot going and works for those who aren't familiar with the Prime incarnation of these characters. Because of this, there's no in-depth characterization, although it's pretty easy to tell the characters apart from design and voice alone. Speaking of which, the voice acting is hit or miss. The cast from the show returns to fulfill their roles, but some certainly did their job better than others.
Some of the lines tend to play on top of each other, especially during combat, which tends to be a bit distracting at times. And while on the topic of voice acting, Steve Blum not only returns for his iconic role of Starscream, but also voices the Beacon cars, trucks, and the Insecticons. Which, I don't know about you guys, but I can really tell that it's him. Probably isn't as obvious to the casual listener, but even so, sometimes I find that distracting too.
While the voice acting may not be the best, the animation is superb. The game has around 60 different cutscenes in its story mode, and everyone, save for the human characters, moves with some great cartoony detail and emotion. Strange that the robots show more expression than the humans. But I digress. How well does this compare to the show itself?
Honestly, my dude, you're not too far off. One of the biggest praises the show gets is for its stellar animation and character design. These guys have so much personality and depth packed into every little expression and gesture. And with every subtle detail they pull off, like, in regards to the show, this is honestly some of the best animation I've ever seen for something like this. And the game doesn't do too bad of a job there either. The models are pretty accurate, though I don't really think they move their eyes at all, or like, blink? But I digress. One of the other noticeable changes was the differing types of melee or special attack weapons you use. Each character has something different and unique just to them, from Optimus's axe, a la his original G1 weapon, to Ratchet's wrench? Just a straight up wrench? You guys know he has regular hand blades in the show, right? Well again, artistic liberties are what make it more unique and fun, I guess. Surprisingly, RC seems to go through the least amount of design changes in that regard, keeping what look like her exact same forearm blades from the show. Not only that, but they give a couple characters abilities or extra upgrades that aren't present in the show, like Knockout's summoning of balls of electricity or Soundwave's arm cannons. But again, it's all in the name of artistic liberty, making the game more interesting to play and balancing each character out, I guess. Pretty cool stuff. Now, back to the animation itself, I definitely agree that it can look a bit clunky at times. And I don't really blame it considering the year this game came out, which was 2012. Graphics have really come a long way within the past few years, so there's gonna be a noticeable difference in quality. Though I do really like how shiny and reflective everyone looks. Even in the middle of a galactic civil war, you gotta keep your frame in tip-top model shape, I guess. Transformers Prime the game also, according to my resources, the all-powerful TF Wiki, takes place somewhere in the middle of Season 2 of the show.
Now, the story isn't the real bulk of the game though. Most of your time is spent with the mechanics. So how is the moment-to-moment gameplay? Well, Transformers Prime is a 3D beat-em-up. You'll go from level to level, and focus most of your time and effort on beating up various enemies. You have access to the A and Y buttons for performing combos, the B button for jumping, ZR for firing a projectile, ZL for locking onto enemies, R for shielding, and L to use an upgrade meter that gradually fills for a limited time boost in power. The left stick moves you around, the right stick moves the camera, and X allows you to change form into a vehicle for breaking an opponent's shield or getting around real fast. You better hope you have enough Pro controllers though, otherwise the Wii Remote control scheme isn't the best. I do enjoy the way the transforming mechanic was implemented here. It's fun to control in both combat sections and specific driving sections, and gives this game a unique mechanic to separate it from others in the genre. In fact, with a well-timed press of the transformation button, you can recover from an enemy hit immediately, adding some extra strategy to the combat. The combat itself is also insanely satisfying. There's a lot of weight behind your hits, and their feedback in both sound and animation. Throughout the story, you also get the chance to play as every Autobot featured in the game, and have a boss battle against each of the Decepticons, unlocking them as playable characters in the multiplayer modes. You'll also be able to find hidden artifacts to unlock character profiles, concept art, shards to improve your level rank, and achievements known as emblems for completing random tasks. Unfortunately, combat can grow pretty repetitive. Enemies don't have much variation in the way they attack, and even bosses don't do much to shake up the strategies in taking them on. There's very limited opportunities in different combos you can perform as well. The game is also pretty easy. The health bar is simply too large. Checkpoints are frequent as well, and the obstacles standing in your way offer no threat because of that. The camera can also get a little janky every now and then. Unfortunately, there are just other games that do what this title does better. But we still have the multiplayer modes to talk about. There's a standard versus mode where up to 2 players and 2 computers can play as their favorite characters and have a quick brawl. It provides 5 stages and every Autobot and Decepticon from the main game, and is pretty much the exact experience I would hope from a simple Transformers fighting game. All of the characters have pretty significant differences in mechanics, even the Decepticons, who were unplayable in the story mode. There's also a timed mode where players are awarded points for knocking out others, and the action is kept high with constant respawns and low starting health. The final multiplayer game is a simple game of keep away. Grab the emblem and try to hold on to it for as long as possible. Hit the opponent if they have the emblem to get them to drop it. Simple stuff, and the emblem is worth more points during the last 30 seconds of the match.
While I'll be more than willing to admit that it certainly has its flaws, Transformers Prime the game still delivers with just how genuinely faithful it is to the feel of the show. Everything seems like it was taken into careful consideration, from getting the original voice cast to play their respective characters again, to just how precise and exact the in-game models are, to heavily using most of the original sound effects as well. Now, maybe that's the standard for video game adaptations of TV shows, maybe it isn't, I'm not really sure since I haven't really played many myself, but the exactness of everything is still something that really stood out to me. But overall, I'd say it's a pretty good adaptation, and while there's certainly plenty of perhaps better Transformers video games out there, like War for Fall of Cybertron, it's still a pretty fun time to be had overall.
Alright, that said, we should get to summing up things in the pros and cons. The gameplay is satisfying, if not somewhat repetitive, and a little too easy, but the animated cutscenes look pretty darn good. The music is pretty generic, I didn't pay much attention to it, and the voice acting is inconsistent to say the least. The multiplayer modes are pretty enjoyable though, and the number one reason for fans of this Transformers incarnation, or Transformers in general, to pick up this title. If you want a copy of the Wii U version, it'll only set you back $10, and it is the definitive version of this game. The DS, 3DS, and Wii versions are essentially the same game, but they have much lower resolutions, and the portable versions in particular run pretty bad.
I feel like while the game definitely does have some solid aspects as far as cutscenes and gameplay goes, the overall story can be a bit boring or predictable, or even downright cheesy at times to the casual player. Or even kinda to me at times, admittedly. It's definitely a more enjoyable experience if you're in the know of this specific continuity, which I can definitely attribute to being a possible negative. But again, I mean, who's really playing this game if you haven't watched the show? I mean, come on now.
As a cartoon tie-in game for a completed show out of syndication, it will not be coming to the Nintendo Switch.
Any final thoughts on this game?
Hey, real quick before we go, can we just talk about Soundwave's boss fight for a sec? I mean, you literally get locked in a room with the dude, and it's got sound equalizers and giant speakers all over the walls, and he's got what looks like a freaking DJ booth up there. Like, straight up, DJ Soundwave better kick your ass with all these sick beats. And I mean, come on, his boss theme? Are you kidding me? Listen to this shit, roll the clip! Okay, I'm sorry, I just really like his boss fight. Carry on.
Overall, Transformers Prime the game is an alright title for fans of the Transformers property. More specifically Prime, although most Transformers fans should get some enjoyment out of it. But there is another Transformers game on the Wii U.